You've probably heard it 100 times. You only use 10% of your brain. It's one of those facts that feels like a secret, like you're sitting on a massive reserve of untapped genius. But here's the truth. It's a myth, and a wildly misleading one at that. Modern brain scans tell a very different story. Whether you're tying your shoes, recalling your first heartbreak, or trying to decide what to eat, your brain is busy. fMRI technology shows that nearly every region lights up, depending on what you're doing. Even simple actions, like listening to a song or walking across a room, engage multiple areas. The myth likely survives because it flatters us. Who doesn't want to believe they're one breakthrough away from unlocking hidden mental superpowers? But evolution isn't wasteful. The human brain uses around 20% of your body's total energy, even though it makes up just 2% of your weight. That's an expensive organ to maintain if 90% of it is just sitting there doing nothing. The reality is much cooler. Your brain is like a symphony, not a single instrument. It doesn't play all its parts at once, but when it does, it's precise, efficient, and responsive. You're not missing out on 90% of your mind. You're already using far more than you think, just not all at the same time. And that's exactly how it's designed to work. We love comparing the brain to a computer. It sounds neat, right? Inputs, outputs, memory banks, processing speed. It fits, but dig a little deeper, and the metaphor starts to fall apart like a cheap analogy under pressure. Unlike a computer, your brain isn't built to follow step by step instructions. It's not working from clean code. It's messy, emotional, and constantly adapting. Two people can hear the same sentence and react completely differently, and that's not a bug, it's a feature. While a computer stores your vacation photo exactly as it was, your brain rewrites your memories every time you think about them. Feelings, smells, timing, they blur and evolve. It's as if your memory is a journal written in wet ink. Computers also don't get bored or inspired. They don't make mistakes because they skipped lunch or because someone broke their heart. But your brain does. Hormones, moods, past experiences, they all play a part. And while machines have central processors, your brain runs more like a city during rush hour, chaotic, interconnected, and without a single command center calling the shots. The truth is, your brain isn't a machine. It's an organic network, not silicon, not programmable, more like a live jazz performance than a spreadsheet. Beautiful, unpredictable, emotional, just like you. Had a rough week, thinking you'll sleep in on Saturday and fix it all. It's tempting to believe you can catch up on sleep like it's a debt you can pay off. But biology has its own rules, and they don't accept weekend repayments. Sleep isn't like money. You can't save it, and you can't fully repay it. When you miss out, even for a night or two, your body feels it. Slow reaction times, foggy memory, dulled focus. Let that go on for days or weeks, and the toll grows deeper. Increased risk of heart disease, mood disorders, and even metabolic issues. Sure, a longer nap or sleeping in a few extra hours can help short term, but it doesn't undo the wear and tear on your internal clock. That jet lagged feeling on Monday morning after a lazy Sunday, that's your circadian rhythm trying to reset. Oversleeping on weekends might actually make falling asleep on Sunday night even harder. So, what does work? Consistency. Getting good quality sleep on a regular schedule is what your body and brain crave. One great Saturday sleep in won't heal 5 nights of stress and screens, But a steady rhythm? That's how you build real recovery, night by night, not all at once. For decades, stretching before exercise was gospel. Coaches, gym teachers, and YouTube fitness gurus have all preached it. Don't skip your stretch, or you'll hurt yourself. But not all stretching is created equal, and not all of it helps before you move. Most people think of static stretching, the kind where you hold a position for 20 to 30 seconds, like pulling your leg behind you or reaching for your toes. While this can improve flexibility over time, doing it cold before a workout can actually reduce muscle strength and performance, especially for intense activities like lifting or sprinting. So, what should you do instead? Dynamic stretching. These are active movements, leg swings, arm circles, walking lunges that mimic what your body's about to do. They warm up your muscles, increase blood flow, and prepare your body to move. Static stretching still has a place. It's great for cooling down or increasing flexibility after a workout. But if you're gearing up to perform, think motion, not just position. Move your body. Don't freeze it. Your performance will thank you. It's a popular idea. Do hot yoga, hit a sauna, sweat it all out. Cleanse your body. Flush the toxins. It feels productive, almost noble. But here's the deal. Sweat is not your detox system. Your liver and kidneys are. Sweat is your body's natural cooling mechanism. It's mostly water, with trace amounts of salt and urea. It regulates temperature, not toxicity. Real detox happens in your liver, where enzymes break down chemicals, and your kidneys, which filter waste and flush it out through urine. If sweating were your backup detox system, you'd be in serious trouble. You might feel great after sweating. That's endorphins, better circulation, maybe a little stress relief. But scientifically, you're not sweating out alcohol, microplastics, or last night's pizza. You're just keeping your temperature in check. Want to help your body detox? Drink water, eat fiber, sleep well. The solution isn't in your sweat, it's in your habits. Sweat is awesome, just not magical. It's one of the most repeated health tips ever. Drink 8 glasses of water a day. It sounds official, simple, easy to track. But it turns out the truth is a lot more flexible and a lot more forgiving. The 8 glasses rule likely came from a 1940s estimate suggesting adults need about 2 liters of fluid daily. But here's what people forget. That includes all sources of hydration, not just water. Fruits, veggies, tea, soup, even coffee all count. Yes, even your morning espresso isn't dehydrating you. Hydration needs vary wildly. A marathon runner in the desert? Different needs than an office worker in air conditioning. Your body isn't silently demanding a fixed number. It's equipped with a built-in alert system. Thirst. If you're thirsty, drink. If your urine's pale yellow, you're good. The catch? Overhydration can be just as dangerous. Drinking too much water can dilute sodium levels in the blood, leading to a condition called hyponatremia. That can be deadly. So the next time someone tells you to chug 8 glasses before lunch, remember, hydration isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Listen to your body, not just your water bottle. Late night cravings come with a side of guilt. Don't eat after 8 p.m., or it'll turn straight into fat. That belief has been passed around like health gospel, but it's based more on assumption than science. Your body doesn't own a clock that switches to fat storage mode after dark. Digestion doesn't shut down when you sleep. What matters most is your total calorie balance over time, not the exact hour you eat. Sure, many late night snacks are calorie bombs, chips, cookies, fast food. It's not the timing that's the issue. It's the extra calories, often eaten mindlessly. And there's another layer: poor sleep. Eating big meals right before bed can mess with your rest, which can disrupt hunger hormones and lead to overeating the next day. But one apple or a slice of turkey before sleep, that won't undo your progress. The key is quality, portion, and context, not the hour on the clock. Late night food doesn't cause weight gain. Overeating does, no matter the time. Microwaves use radiation, and radiation sounds scary. So it's not surprising people wonder, can microwave ovens give you cancer? The short answer is no. And here's why. Microwave ovens use non-ionizing radiation. It's a completely different beast from the harmful ionizing kind you get from X-rays or UV light. Non-ionizing radiation doesn't damage DNA. It simply agitates water molecules, creating heat. That's it. Your microwave isn't zapping your food with cancer rays. It's just warming it up. And no, microwaved food isn't radioactive. The energy stops the moment the microwave turns off. In fact, because microwaves cook quickly and with little water, they can actually preserve more nutrients than boiling. As for safety, the oven's design, metal casing, mesh screen, prevents leaks. If your microwave's in good condition, it's safe. The word radiation might set off alarms, but in this case, it's just physics doing you a favor. Heat your leftovers. Fear not. MSG, monosodium glutamate, has been accused of causing everything from headaches to heart palpitations. For decades, it carried the label of a dangerous food additive. But the science? It tells a different story. MSG is simply a flavor enhancer that gives food a savory, umami punch. The same taste you get from mushrooms, cheese, or tomatoes. It's made by fermenting starch, and chemically, it's almost identical to the glutamate your body produces naturally. So where did the fear come from? In the 1960s, a letter to a medical journal described vague symptoms after eating Chinese food and blamed MSG. No solid research, just a hunch. But the story spread and stuck. Since then, dozens of large-scale studies have found no consistent link between MSG and illness in the general population. Regulatory bodies worldwide consider it safe. The only exception, a small group of people who may be sensitive to very high doses on an empty stomach. MSG doesn't deserve its bad rep. It's not some mysterious chemical. It's a well-studied ingredient used in cuisines across the globe. For most people, it's no more harmful than the salt on your fries. Organic food wears a halo. No synthetic pesticides, no GMOs. Better for the earth. It just feels cleaner. And for many, that translates to healthier. But the truth is more nuanced. Organic refers to how food is grown, not necessarily what it contains. An organic apple isn't significantly more nutritious than a conventionally grown one. Studies show that the vitamin and mineral content is nearly identical. In some cases, organic produce might have slightly more antioxidants, but the difference isn't dramatic. What organic food can offer is lower pesticide residue, but even conventional produce falls well below safety limits set by health agencies, and a quick rinse reduces residue even further. And don't be fooled by the packaging. Organic cookies, chips, and sodas still contain sugar, salt, and fat. Organic doesn't mean nutrient dense. It means the ingredients were farmed a certain way. So is organic bad? Not at all. But is it automatically better? Not necessarily. The healthiest food choices depend more on what you eat consistently than on a single label. Fresh, whole, colorful foods, organic or not, are what matter most. You're answering emails, watching a webinar, checking your phone, and half writing a report all at once. It feels productive, but it's a productivity illusion. Multitasking isn't doing multiple things at once. It's quickly switching between tasks, and every switch costs you time and mental energy. Each time your brain shifts gears, it burns fuel and loses focus. That lost momentum is called attention residue. A piece of your brain stays stuck on what you were doing before, making it harder to fully focus on what you're doing now. Studies show multitaskers often perform worse on memory, concentration, and problem solving tasks. They're more prone to errors and take longer to finish. And yet, many still feel productive because being busy feels like being effective. Simple tasks, like folding laundry while listening to a podcast, are fine. But trying to write a report while toggling between texts and tabs, that's not multitasking. It's distraction. Real productivity comes from single tasking, one focus, one goal, fewer mistakes, better results. It's not about doing more, it's about doing better. Creative people are right brained, analytical thinkers are left brained. You've probably heard that, and maybe even taken a quiz to figure out which side you are. But this popular belief is far more fiction than fact. Yes, the brain has two hemispheres, and yes, some functions are more dominant on one side. Language tends to live more on the left. Spatial awareness leans right, but that's where the simplicity ends. The truth is, both sides of your brain work together all the time. Even when you're solving a math problem, your brain uses logic, left side, and pattern recognition, right side. Writing a poem, you're using language centers, left, and emotion, right. It's a symphony, not a split. Brain imaging studies involving thousands of people show no evidence that individuals are right brained or left brained in personality or ability. The idea likely stuck because it feels neat, like a personality horoscope with a scientific twist. But the brain doesn't sort us into boxes, it builds bridges. So whether you're creative or logical, methodical or spontaneous, it's not about hemisphere dominance. It's about how your whole mind works together. It's a stat that's been tossed around for decades. Men think about sex every 7 seconds. That's over 8,000 times a day. Sounds wild, right? That's because it is. There's no study that supports this claim. In fact, no scientific research has ever found anything close. It likely started as a joke or exaggeration that caught fire, but it's not backed by data. When researchers actually studied this, they found that college-aged men thought about sex around 19 times a day on average. Women? About 10. But here's the twist. Those same men thought about food and sleep almost as often. The human brain is tuned into basic needs, but not fixated on just one. The myth also reduces men to biological robots, but thoughts are spontaneous, shaped by personality, culture, and context. No one's brain is on a sexual timer set to fire every 7 seconds. Sure, sex is on people's minds, but so are bills, emails, leftovers, and weekend plans. The 7-second myth isn't just wrong, it's a cartoon version of how the mind works. There's a subtle myth woven into the modern hustle culture. Sleep is for the weak, rest is laziness. Productivity only happens when you're awake, grinding, pushing, and doing. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Sleep isn't wasted time. It's where some of your brain's most important work happens. Memory consolidation, emotional processing, hormone regulation, even problem solving. It all ramps up while you sleep. Lack of sleep doesn't just make you tired, it makes you slower, more forgetful, less creative. You don't just lose hours, you lose quality. Great ideas don't come from burnout, they come from rest. Want to be more productive? Protect your sleep like it's part of your strategy, because it is. Your brain is working with you, not against you, but it needs time to reset, recharge, and sort the chaos. That's not laziness, that's high performance. It's a sound that divides people. Some find it satisfying, others flinch in horror. But no matter how you feel about it, the same warning follows. Stop cracking your knuckles, or you'll get arthritis. But is that actually true? The cracking sound doesn't come from bones grinding or ligaments snapping. It comes from gas bubbles collapsing in the fluid inside your joints. It's a pressure release, not a sign of damage. And the science? It's pretty clear. Decades of research, including a famous informal experiment where a doctor cracked the knuckles on just one hand for over 60 years, show no link between knuckle cracking and arthritis. Neither hand developed the condition. Some people might experience temporary swelling or reduced grip strength if they crack their knuckles constantly. But arthritis? That's caused by inflammation, autoimmune conditions, or long-term joint wear, not a harmless pop. So, while your habit might annoy everyone around you, it's not destroying your joints. That sharp crack is just gas escaping, not trouble building. You shave, and days later, the hair comes back darker, rougher, and more stubborn. The conclusion? Shaving makes it grow back thicker. But that's an illusion, not a fact. Here's what's actually happening. When you shave, you cut the hair at the surface, leaving a blunt edge. That edge feels coarser because it's no longer tapered, and because new stubble hasn't been exposed to sunlight or wear, it may look darker at first. But the follicle? It's untouched. Hair thickness, growth speed, and color are all determined by your genes and hormones, not your razor. You're trimming the top, not reprogramming what grows underneath. Studies across the board show that shaving has no effect on the density, rate, or coarseness of hair growth. If it did, people would have thicker arms, thicker eyebrows, and thicker beards with every shave. And we don't. So no, shaving doesn't change the rules of biology. It just changes the edge of the hair. The rest is perception, not proof. You've probably heard it as a warning, or maybe an excuse. Every drink kills brain cells. But that's not how alcohol works. It doesn't destroy your neurons one drink at a time. What alcohol does do is interfere with how your brain communicates. It affects neurotransmitters, slows down processing, impairs coordination, and messes with memory, especially in high doses. But moderate drinking doesn't kill neurons. Long-term, heavy drinking is a different story. Chronic alcohol abuse can lead to brain shrinkage, especially in areas like the frontal lobe that control judgment and decision making. It can also contribute to nutrient deficiencies that damage brain function over time, particularly a lack of thiamine, vitamin B1, which can lead to a serious condition known as Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, or wet brain. But again, it's not that alcohol is zapping brain cells on contact. The damage is cumulative, slow, and based on habits, not a single glass of wine or a Friday night out. So, while alcohol isn't harmless, the image of it killing your brain cell by cell is more fiction than fact. Think of it as interference, not demolition. This myth is so persistent, it deserves a second strike. People love the idea of sweating out toxins, whether it's from a hot yoga session or a marathon sauna sit. But it's just not how your body gets rid of a waste. Your sweat glands are there to regulate temperature, not flush out poisons. Sweat is 99% water, with trace amounts of salt, urea, and electrolytes. The heavy lifting of detoxing, that's your liver and kidneys. They filter out toxins and send them packing through urine and stool. Even in extreme heat, the toxins you sweat out are negligible compared to what your kidneys remove in a single trip to the bathroom. You'd have to sweat gallons to match what they do in an hour. Yes, sweating feels good. It boosts circulation, releases endorphins, and gives you a sense of accomplishment. But it's not a shortcut to purification. If you really want to detox, eat clean, hydrate, sleep well, and take care of your gut. Your body already knows how to cleanse itself. You just have to let it. Blind as a bat. It's one of the most common phrases in the English language. But ironically, it's completely false. Bats aren't blind, not even close. In fact, many bats see quite well. Fruit bats, for example, have large, sensitive eyes that help them navigate through forests in low light. Some even have vision comparable to cats. So where does the confusion come from? Likely echolocation. Many insect-eating bats use this form of biological sonar to see with sound. They emit high-frequency calls and listen for the echoes bouncing off objects around them. It's a powerful tool, accurate enough to detect tiny insects mid-flight in complete darkness. But echolocation doesn't mean their eyes don't work. It just means they have extra senses, not fewer. And in some species, bats can even detect ultraviolet light. Evolution didn't give bats sonar because they were blind. It gave them an upgrade. So the next time someone uses that tired phrase, you'll know. Bats aren't blind. They're just overqualified. It's a joke almost everyone has heard. Goldfish can't remember anything beyond 3 seconds. But if that were true, goldfish wouldn't be able to learn, recognize, or adapt. And they definitely do. In scientific tests, goldfish have been trained to respond to specific sounds, navigate mazes, and remember feeding routines, weeks or even months after the initial training. That's not a glitch. That's memory. Owners often notice their goldfish swimming to the top of the tank at feeding time or reacting differently to certain people. Those behaviors don't come from instinct alone. They come from learned patterns, and learning requires memory. So, why does the myth stick around? Probably because goldfish don't show emotions, like dogs or cats. They're silent, smooth, and unreadable. But that doesn't mean they're simple. Goldfish aren't forgetful, they're just quiet about it. It's the classic desert survival myth. Camels store water in their humps. The image makes sense. They survive scorching heat for days. Surely they're carrying a secret water tank on their backs. But that's not what those humps are for. Camels' humps actually store fat, not water. That fat acts as an energy reserve, allowing them to go long periods without food. And yes, metabolizing that fat can produce a small amount of water. But the real hydration magic happens elsewhere. Camels are incredibly efficient at conserving water. Their bodies minimize sweat loss. Their kidneys produce ultra-concentrated urine. Even their nostrils trap moisture from their breath to reuse it. And when they finally do find water, a thirsty camel can drink up to 40 gallons in one sitting without getting sick. So, while the water in the hump myth is catchy, the truth is even more impressive. Camels don't carry water in one place. They're built from head to hoof to survive without it. As kids, we're told never to touch baby birds. The mom will smell you and abandon it. The message is meant to protect wildlife, but it's not scientifically accurate. Most birds have a very poor sense of smell. They recognize their chicks through sight, sound, and location, not by scent. So, if you pick up a fledgling and put it back in the nest, the parents aren't going to panic and flee. More likely, they'll continue feeding and protecting their young like nothing happened. The myth likely started as a way to keep curious kids from interfering with wildlife. And to be fair, that's still good advice. Baby birds are delicate. Handling them too much can cause stress or injury. But you don't need to worry about abandonment from a single touch. If you find a baby bird on the ground, it might not be lost. It could be a fledgling, learning to fly, with parents nearby keeping watch. When in doubt, call a wildlife expert. But know this, a human scent won't break the family bond. Eat your carrots. You'll be able to see in the dark. It's a line parents have been using for generations. And while carrots are good for your eyes, they won't give you night vision superpowers. Carrots are rich in beta carotene, which your body converts into vitamin A. And yes, vitamin A is essential for healthy vision, particularly for your retina's ability to detect low light. If you're deficient in it, your night vision will suffer, and eating more carrots can help restore it. But if your vitamin A levels are already normal, extra carrots won't sharpen your eyes like a hawk's. Your body has a limit on how much vitamin A it can use. The rest gets stored or flushed out. So where did this myth take root? During World War II, the British military spread the idea that their pilots were eating tons of carrots to see enemy planes at night. In reality, they had developed new radar technology, but they didn't want to reveal it. The carrot story was a clever cover. Carrots are healthy, no doubt, but unless you're deficient in vitamin A, they won't turn you into a nocturnal superhero. Good nutrition helps your eyes, but it doesn't rewrite the laws of biology. It's the go-to explanation at birthday parties and family dinners. The kids are bouncing off the walls because of the sugar. But here's the twist. Study after study says sugar doesn't actually cause hyperactivity. Researchers have tested this myth in dozens of controlled experiments. Kids were given sugar, placebos, or nothing at all, and their behavior was observed. The result? No consistent difference in activity levels. What did change was perception. When parents thought their kids had eaten sugar, they were more likely to describe them as hyperactive, even if they hadn't. That's called the expectancy effect, when belief shapes what you see. So why does the myth feel so true? Because sugar is usually served during exciting situations. Parties, holidays, Halloween. The chaos gets blamed on the cupcakes, but the real cause is the environment. That's not to say sugar is harmless. Too much can affect blood sugar levels, mood swings, and long-term health. But the wild behavior, that's not sugar's fault. It's the setting, not the snack. Organic food carries a health halo. No pesticides, no GMOs, more natural. But does that always mean it's healthier? Not necessarily. The term organic refers to farming practices, not nutrient content. An organic apple and a conventional apple have almost the same levels of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Some studies show slightly higher antioxidants in organic produce, but the differences are usually small. What organic does offer is lower pesticide residue. But here's the catch. Conventional produce is still subject to strict safety limits, and washing fruits and vegetables, organic or not, removes most residue. It's also easy to forget that organic doesn't mean nutrient dense. Organic cookies, chips, or soda still contain sugar, fat, and salt. The ingredients may be organic, but the effects are the same. Choosing organic can still be a smart decision for the environment, animal welfare, or personal preference. But if you're looking purely at nutrition, the label doesn't always guarantee better health. What matters most is what you eat consistently, not just how it was grown. It's late, you're hungry, but that voice in your head says, "Don't eat now. It'll all turn into fat while you sleep." Sounds logical, but it's missing the bigger picture. Weight gain isn't about when you eat. It's about how much you eat over time. Your body processes calories the same way, day or night. The idea that your metabolism shuts down while you sleep is a myth. The real reason late night eating can lead to weight gain isn't biology, it's behavior. Evening snacks tend to be high calorie, high fat, and mindlessly consumed. Chips, cookies, ice cream, not salads and grilled chicken. That's where the extra calories sneak in. Also, large meals before bed can disrupt your sleep. Poor sleep messes with hunger hormones like leptin and ghrelin, which can lead to increased cravings and overeating the next day. So, it's not the time, it's the trend. If your daily intake is balanced and you're mindful of your portions, a small nighttime snack won't derail your goals. Blaming the clock oversimplifies a much more complex process. It's one of those dramatic sounding myths. When you sneeze, your heart skips a beat or even stops entirely. But while sneezing feels intense, it doesn't shut down your heart. Here's what actually happens. When you sneeze, your chest experiences a sudden pressure change. That change can affect your heart rate briefly, but it doesn't cause your heart to pause. At most, it might slow slightly for a second, due to a reflex called the vagal response. That's a far cry from stopping. In fact, your heart is constantly adjusting to changes in your body. It speeds up when you stand up, slows when you exhale, and responds to everything from exercise to emotions. A sneeze is just one more moment in a long list of adjustments, not a life threatening interruption. So while a sneeze might shake your whole body and get you a "bless you" from across the room, your heart keeps right on ticking. You've heard it before. Wear a hat, you lose 80% of your body heat through your head. But as cozy as that sounds, it's not true. Heat loss happens through any exposed part of your body, not just your scalp. The myth traces back to a flawed military experiment in the 1950s, where subjects were bundled up in cold weather gear, but their heads were left uncovered. Naturally, most heat escaped through the only exposed area, but that doesn't mean the head is special. It just wasn't covered. In reality, your head makes up only about 7 to 10% of your body's surface area. That means, proportionally, it contributes a similar amount to overall heat loss. If you went outside in shorts and a tank top, you'd lose way more heat from your limbs than your forehead. Still, wearing a hat in cold weather is smart. The skin on your head has lots of blood vessels and not much insulation, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, not the magic portal where all your warmth disappears. Thanks to TV shows and beach folklore, the go-to remedy for jellyfish stings has become clear and cringy. Pee on it. But before you unzip, let's break down the science. Jellyfish stings come from tiny, venomous barbs called nematocysts. Even after the sting, Many of them remain on the skin, waiting to be triggered. And here's the issue: urine can activate them. The salt content, temperature, or acidity of your pee might cause more venom to release, making the sting worse, not better. So, what actually helps? Vinegar. It neutralizes the nematocysts and stops them from firing. After that, soaking the sting in hot, not scalding, water can help break down the venom proteins and ease the pain. Peeing on a sting might make for a wild story, but it's not first aid. It's folklore with poor chemistry. Skip the golden shower. Reach for vinegar instead. There's a long-standing piece of advice floating around. Starve a fever, feed a cold. But hidden in that phrase is another common myth that sweating out a fever will help you recover faster. Not quite. A fever is your body's natural response to infection. It raises your internal temperature to make it harder for viruses and bacteria to survive. And yes, you might sweat as your body cools back down, but forcing yourself to sweat doesn't speed up healing, and it could make things worse. When you sweat heavily during a fever, you risk dehydration. That makes it harder for your immune system to function. You also lose electrolytes your body needs to maintain balance. Instead of trying to sweat it out, focus on rest, hydration, and nutrition. A fever isn't something to battle, it's something to support. Let your body do what it's designed to do and give it the tools to succeed. The phrase, humans evolved from monkeys, gets thrown around a lot, but it's misleading. It oversimplifies evolution and creates confusion about where we actually came from. Humans didn't evolve from the monkeys we see today. Instead, we share a common ancestor, a species that lived millions of years ago. That ancestor branched out. Some descendants became today's monkeys and apes, and one branch, over time, became us. It's like a family tree. You didn't come from your cousin. You both share a grandparent. Similarly, we're evolutionary cousins with monkeys and apes, not their descendants. Fossils and genetics tell us humans are most closely related to chimpanzees and bonobos, sharing about 98 to 99% of our DNA. But even they are not our ancestors. They're fellow survivors from a shared lineage. Understanding this doesn't make us less special. It makes the story richer. It reminds us that we're not apart from nature, we're a part of it. Our evolutionary path is tangled, complex, and deeply connected to the living world around us. You've heard it 100 times. No two fingerprints are alike. It's been the gold standard for identity verification for over a century. But here's the catch: we've never actually proven that fingerprints are 100% unique. Fingerprints are incredibly complex, shaped by both genetics and random factors in the womb. The chances of a perfect match are astronomically low, but astronomically low isn't the same as impossible. Even forensic experts now admit that fingerprint analysis isn't flawless. There have been real-world cases where fingerprints were misread, leading to wrongful arrests. Some overturned only after DNA testing. And get this, even identical twins who share the same DNA have slightly different fingerprints. But those differences aren't always drastic, and in massive populations, partial matches can and do happen. So while fingerprints are highly distinctive, calling them completely unique is more belief than confirmed fact. They're a valuable tool, but they're not infallible. Like everything in science, they deserve scrutiny, not blind faith. For decades, people believed dogs live in a black and white world, like an old movie reel. But science has since shown that our four-legged friends see more color than we ever gave them credit for. Dogs don't have the same vision as humans, but they do see color, just on a narrower spectrum. While we have three types of color receptors, red, green, blue, dogs only have two, blue and yellow. That means reds and greens likely appear dull or grayish, but blues and yellows stand out clearly. In practical terms, a red ball on green grass may not pop for your pup, but a blue one definitely will. Dogs evolved as hunters and companions, not artists. Their vision is optimized for detecting motion and seeing in low light, not admiring sunsets. They're built to spot prey in the dusk, not judge color palettes. So while they might not see the world in full technicolor, they certainly don't see it in grayscale. The black and white myth? It's outdated. Your dog sees the world with more color and more clarity than you think. It's one of the most widespread, creepy, crawly myths out there that while you sleep, you unknowingly swallow 8 spiders a year. It's gross, it's memorable, and it's absolutely false. There's no scientific evidence supporting this claim. In fact, it was likely made up on purpose to prove how easily misinformation spreads when it sounds believable. Let's break it down. Humans don't sleep with their mouths wide open for extended periods, and even if they did, the constant movement from breathing, snoring, or shifting around would scare any spider away. Spiders aren't suicidal. They're cautious, and they avoid places with warmth, vibration, and danger, which your mouth definitely qualifies as. Also, people usually wake up when something light and ticklish touches their face, especially during sleep. Your brain might be asleep, but it's still monitoring for threats, like, say, something crawling on you. The truth? Your bed isn't a buffet. Spiders aren't interested in your mouth, and you're not involuntarily gobbling up arachnids in your sleep. This myth spread not because it's true, but because it's just the right blend of creepy and plausible. It's poetic, it's comforting, it's wrong. Lightning absolutely does strike the same place twice, and it often strikes dozens of times. The Empire State Building, for example, is hit roughly 20 to 25 times every year. Why? Because it's tall, made of metal, and isolated, making it an ideal target for electrical discharge. Lightning follows the path of least resistance. If a structure has been hit before, chances are it's well positioned to be hit again. The atmosphere doesn't remember. Electricity doesn't avoid spots based on history. It follows the physics of the moment. The phrase, lightning never strikes twice, might work as a metaphor for rare events, but in reality, it's just bad science wrapped in a catchy saying. So if you're seeking shelter in a thunderstorm, don't stand next to a tall pole thinking it's safe because it was just hit. Lightning doesn't keep a checklist. If the conditions are right, it'll come back again and again. You've probably been warned about it since you were a kid. Don't sit so close to the TV. You'll ruin your eyes. But today's science says otherwise. Modern screens, unlike early models from the 1960s, are designed to be safe, even up close. Those older TVs did emit higher levels of radiation, but that issue was fixed decades ago. The warning just never died. Sitting close to a screen might cause eye strain, dry eyes, or headaches, especially if you stare too long without breaks. But these effects are temporary and go away with rest. They don't permanently damage your eyes. Children often sit closer to screens because their eyes focus better up close. If a child always sits close to the TV, it might be a sign they're nearsighted, Not that the TV is causing the problem. A good rule? Use the 20-20-20 method. Every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That gives your eyes a chance to reset and relax. So no, sitting too close won't ruin your vision. It might cause a little fatigue, but that's a matter of comfort, not long-term harm. It's a common assumption, and a dangerous one. You can't get pregnant while on your period. While the odds are lower, they're far from zero. Here's why. Sperm can live inside the female body for up to 5 days. If you have a shorter menstrual cycle, say 21 to 24 days, ovulation may occur soon after your period ends. That means if you have unprotected sex toward the end of your period, sperm could still be viable when ovulation kicks in days later. And ovulation doesn't follow a textbook schedule. Stress, illness, medications, and hormonal shifts can all cause your cycle to vary. Ovulation can come early, late, or unpredictably. The period pregnancy myth gives a false sense of safety. So while it's less likely to conceive during menstruation, it's not impossible. If you're sexually active and not trying to get pregnant, don't rely on the calendar. Rely on contraception, spit it out, or swallow it. And if you swallow it, are you carrying it around for the next 7 years? This myth has stuck around for generations. But here's the truth. Your digestive system can't fully break down gum, but it also doesn't hold on to it. Swallowed gum passes through your system largely intact. Your body absorbs what it can, like sweeteners or oils, and the rest moves along with other waste. Eventually, it exits just like everything else, usually within a few days. The myth likely started as a way to keep kids from swallowing gum, and in very rare cases, like swallowing a huge amount or having a pre-existing digestive issue, gum can contribute to blockages. But for most people, it's harmless. That said, gum isn't food. It's not meant to be swallowed regularly. But if it slips down once in a while, don't worry. You won't be haunted by a sticky lump for the next decade. It's a favorite warning from worried parents. Don't drink too much coffee. It'll stunt your growth. But no scientific evidence supports this claim. Growth is driven by genetics, hormones, and nutrition, not your caffeine intake. Coffee doesn't interfere with growth plates, bone development, or height potential. If it did, we'd see clear patterns in the millions of people who drink coffee daily, and we don't. This myth may have started because caffeine can interfere with calcium absorption if consumed in excess without enough dietary calcium. But in real-world amounts, and with a balanced diet, this effect is minimal. More valid concerns about kids and caffeine? It can cause sleep problems, jitteriness, and increased heart rate. But height? Not on the list. So, enjoy your latte, but maybe go decaf before bed. Your growth is in your genes, not your cup. Monosodium glutamate, MSG, has been demonized for decades. People claim it causes headaches, flushing, fatigue, and worse. But the science tells a different story. MSG is a flavor enhancer that boosts umami, the savory fifth taste. It's found naturally in foods like tomatoes, cheese, mushrooms, and even breast milk. The additive version? It's chemically identical. Multiple large-scale studies and reviews by the FDA, WHO, and other health organizations have found no consistent evidence that MSG is harmful to the general population. The so-called Chinese restaurant syndrome was based on anecdotal reports, not controlled studies. In fact, many reactions attributed to MSG may be triggered by other ingredients. like salt, preservatives, or other spices, or just nocebo effects, where expecting symptoms actually causes them. Some people might have mild sensitivity, just like with any food, but for the vast majority, MSG is safe. The real issue? Fear, not science. Many people believe that human memory is like a video camera, precise, detailed, and stored permanently. But memory doesn't work that way, not even close. Your brain doesn't record, it reconstructs. Every time you remember something, your brain pieces together bits of sensory data, emotion, and context. And each time you recall it, the memory can change subtly, colored by new experiences, suggestions, or beliefs. Studies and eyewitness testimony show how fragile and malleable memory really is. Two people can witness the same event and recall completely different versions with confidence. This doesn't mean memory is useless. It just means it's not perfect. Your brain prioritizes meaning over precision. It filters, it fills gaps, and sometimes it invents. Trust your memory, but verify important details. It's not a hard drive, it's a storyteller. Imagine falling asleep with headphones on and waking up fluent in Spanish or an expert in math. Sounds like a dream, right? That's all it is, a dream. While your brain does process some information during sleep, especially sounds, it's not the right environment for complex learning. You might become slightly more familiar with a few patterns, like sounds or rhythms, but deep learning, that requires focus, repetition, and conscious effort. What is true is that sleep strengthens learning. After studying while awake, a full night's sleep helps consolidate memory and improve retention. So, sleep is essential for learning. It just isn't a shortcut to do the learning. The next time you're tempted to use a sleep learning hack, remember, the best thing you can do for your brain is sleep well after studying, not try to learn while unconscious. Some older studies claimed most people dreamt in black and white, but those studies were conducted when black and white television was the norm. Turns out, media influences how we remember our dreams. Once color TV became widespread, so did reports of dreaming in color. Today, the vast majority of people report vivid, colorful dreams. While some dreams may lack color or feel gray toned, that's more about content, lighting, or mood than how the brain is wired. Dreams aren't filtered through a projector. They're built from your experiences, your memories, and your inner world. And in most cases, that world is bursting with color, even if you forget it by morning. You've likely heard people described as left brained, logical, analytical, or right brained, creative, emotional. It's a neat way to categorize personality, but it's a myth. While certain brain functions are more active in specific hemispheres, language on the left, spatial awareness on the right, most tasks use both sides of the brain working together. Creativity, logic, problem solving, all of it involves crosstalk between hemispheres. Functional brain imaging shows that no one is right brained or left brained. We all use both sides constantly, regardless of personality. The appeal of the myth comes from its simplicity, but real neuroscience is much more dynamic and much more interesting. They're trendy, colorful, and sold as the ultimate reset. Juice cleanses that detox your body. But here's the truth. Your liver and kidneys already do that job 24/7. No juice required. Your body constantly filters out toxins through sweat, urine, and waste. A cleanse doesn't speed that up. In fact, extreme juice diets can deprive you of protein, healthy fats, and fiber, slowing metabolism and weakening your immune response. Juice may be rich in vitamins, but it's also loaded with sugar. Without fiber from whole fruits and veggies, your blood sugar spikes hard and crashes fast. Worse, there's no scientific evidence that juice flushes toxins from your body. None. Want to support real detox? Eat whole foods, hydrate, sleep, move. That's how you help your body do what it's already built to do: clean itself from the inside out. You see it everywhere. Boost your immunity with this one trick. But immunity isn't a light switch you can flip. It's a complex, adaptive system, not a muscle you can instantly bulk up. The immune system is a network of organs, cells, and proteins working in harmony. Supporting it takes time. That means getting consistent sleep, eating a nutrient dense diet, staying active, and managing stress, not chugging orange juice when you feel a sneeze coming on. Too much boosting can even be harmful. Overstimulating the immune system is what leads to autoimmune diseases, where your body attacks itself. What you want isn't an overactive immune system. You want a balanced one, and that comes from sustainable health habits, not last-minute supplements or immune shots. It's the most repeated health rule out there. Drink 8 8-ounce glasses of water a day. But while hydration is crucial, the 8 by 8 rule is overly simplistic. Your water needs to depend on your body size, activity level, environment, diet, and even metabolism. If you eat a lot of fruits, vegetables, or soup, you may already be getting a big chunk of your hydration from food. Thirst is your body's natural signal, and a reliable one. Unless you're in extreme conditions or prone to dehydration, like athletes or the elderly, listening to your thirst is usually enough. That said, many people do walk around mildly dehydrated, especially when drinking lots of coffee, soda, or alcohol. But there's no magic number. There's just your body asking for what it needs. So drink water. Just don't treat 8 glasses as gospel. Treat it as a guideline and adjust to your life. No sweat, no gain, right? Not exactly. Sweat is your body's cooling system, not a measure of effort. You can sweat buckets walking in a sauna, or barely at all during a high-intensity strength session in a cool room. The amount you sweat depends on temperature, humidity, genetics, hydration, and how acclimated you are to heat, not just how hard you're working. Some people naturally sweat more than others. That doesn't mean they're burning more calories or training harder. It just means their body cools itself differently. True fitness progress comes from consistency, intensity, and adaptation, not your shirt's wetness. So while sweat feels satisfying, don't use it as your only gauge. Sweating doesn't mean fat is melting. It means your body's trying to keep cool. That's it. You've probably heard that satellites float because there's no gravity in space. But that's a misunderstanding. Gravity is why satellites stay in orbit, not why they float away. Earth's gravity extends far into space. It's what holds the moon in orbit. Satellites aren't outside gravity, they're inside it, falling constantly toward Earth. But they're also moving forward at such high speeds that they keep missing the ground. That's what orbiting is: falling sideways. Satellites aren't weightless because gravity disappears. They're weightless because they're in free fall, just like astronauts in the International Space Station, which is only about 250 miles above Earth, well within our gravitational field. So no, satellites don't float because gravity is gone. They float because they're riding it with precision. Hollywood loves this one. Astronaut helmet breaks, and boom, instant explosion or freezing. But real science is more unsettling and more accurate. If you were suddenly exposed to the vacuum of space, you wouldn't explode. Your body wouldn't freeze instantly either. What would happen is this: the air in your lungs would rush out violently, causing serious internal damage. Saliva would boil, blood would bubble. You'd lose consciousness in about 15 seconds from lack of oxygen, but you'd remain intact for a while. Death would come from hypoxia and decompression, not explosion. NASA has tested this accidentally. In one case, a test subject lost pressure in a vacuum chamber and passed out. He survived, but only because pressure was restored quickly. The vacuum of space is brutal, but not cinematic, more silent death than dramatic detonation. This myth is everywhere. Toilets flush clockwise in the northern hemisphere, counterclockwise in the southern, thanks to the Coriolis effect. But it's not true, at least not in your bathroom. The Coriolis effect is real. It's what causes large-scale systems, like hurricanes, to spin differently in each hemisphere. But toilets? They're too small. The direction water swirls in a flush is determined by the shape of the bowl and the jets, not by Earth's rotation. So if you fly to Australia and stare at a toilet expecting the swirl to reverse, you'll probably be disappointed or confused. The myth persists because it sounds scientific and exotic, but physics has different plans. This one's a classic trivia myth. The only man-made object visible from space is the Great Wall of China. It sounds amazing, but it's wrong. The Great Wall is long, yes, but it's also narrow and made of natural colored stone that blends into the terrain. From low Earth orbit, it's incredibly difficult to see with the naked eye, often impossible without magnification. In contrast, cities, highways, airports, and large dams are much more visible from space due to their shape, contrast, and scale. Astronauts confirm this. Many have said they couldn't spot the wall at all, while other human structures stood out clearly. The Great Wall is one of humanity's greatest architectural feats, but not one of its most visible from orbit. When you picture a Viking, you probably imagine a towering warrior with a horned helmet and an axe. But here's the truth. Real Vikings never wore horned helmets into battle. That image is pure myth. There's no archaeological evidence of Viking-era horned helmets used in warfare. In fact, wearing horns in battle would be impractical. They'd snag on things, throw off balance, and make you an easy target. So where did this image come from? Mostly 19th century operas and romantic art. In Richard Wagner's famous opera cycle, Der Ring des Nibelungen, costume designers added horned helmets for dramatic flair, and the image stuck. Vikings were fierce, but their armor was functional. The horned helmet myth is more about showbiz than history. Napoleon complex implies short men overcompensate for their height, supposedly inspired by Napoleon Bonaparte. But guess what? Napoleon wasn't short. He was about average height for his time. He measured around 5 feet 7 inches in modern terms, which was perfectly normal in early 19th century France. Confusion arose from two sources: the French measurement system in French feet, which were longer, and British propaganda that depicted him as a tiny tyrant to mock and belittle him. Napoleon wasn't a towering figure, but he wasn't unusually small either. The myth stuck because it reinforced a stereotype and helped fuel ridicule from his enemies. His legacy is complex, but his height, pretty standard. There's a persistent belief that before Columbus, everyone thought the earth was flat, but that's not true. Educated people in the Middle Ages knew the earth was round. Greek thinkers like Pythagoras and Aristotle had already established Earth's roundness centuries earlier. By the Middle Ages, scholars, sailors, and navigators used this knowledge regularly. In fact, they even had reasonable estimates for Earth's circumference. So, where did the flat Earth myth come from? Mostly 19th century writers who wanted to paint the Middle Ages as ignorant and backward, especially when promoting scientific progress or secular ideals. The myth was useful for making the past look foolish, but it's historically inaccurate. Medieval thinkers weren't perfect, but they weren't flat earthers either. It's often said that Albert Einstein failed math as a student, and that's meant to inspire struggling learners. But it's not true. Einstein was a math prodigy. By the time he was 12, he was studying calculus. At 15, he mastered advanced math that many students don't learn until college. The myth likely comes from a misunderstanding of his academic record. He once failed an entrance exam to a Swiss school, but he actually aced the math portion. It was the language section that tripped him up. Why does this myth persist? Because people like to believe geniuses struggled like everyone else. It's comforting. But in Einstein's case, math was one of his strongest subjects from the beginning. He didn't fail math. He rewrote its limits. Poor goldfish, forever branded as forgetful little creatures, doomed to swim in endless circles with no memory. But the truth, goldfish are far from brainless. Scientific studies have shown goldfish can remember information for weeks or even months. They can be trained to associate sounds with feeding times, navigate mazes, and recognize patterns. Some even learn tricks. The 3-second memory myth likely arose from people projecting human boredom onto fish behavior. But repetition doesn't mean amnesia. It often means habit, instinct, or expectation. In reality, goldfish have solid memory capabilities for their size and brain structure. They may not write symphonies, but they're definitely not mindless. So next time you tap the tank, don't assume they forgot you. It's a haunting image. Bodies buried underground while hair and nails keep growing. But this eerie belief is a trick of perception, not biology. After death, the body begins to dehydrate. As the skin recedes and tightens, it exposes more of the hair and nail surface, making them look longer. But no growth is happening. Growth requires active cells, oxygen, nutrients, all of which shut down quickly after death. The idea stuck because it's visual and unsettling. It suggests something lingering after life is gone. But it's illusion, not reality. So no, your fingernails won't turn into claws in the coffin. That's horror fiction, not human biology. The phrase, blind as a bat, is wildly inaccurate because bats can see just fine. In fact, many species have excellent eyesight, especially in low light. It's true that bats rely heavily on echolocation, bouncing sound waves off objects to navigate and hunt in darkness. But echolocation doesn't replace vision, it complements it. Some bats, especially fruit bats, have vision as sharp as a cat's. So, where did the blindness myth come from? Likely from the way bats fly erratically at night or dart into places they shouldn't. To humans, that looks clumsy, but to bats, it's just high-speed precision flying, using multiple senses at once. Bottom line, bats aren't blind. They're just really, really good at using sound and sight. It's a common belief, especially among teenagers and anyone debating their first shave. If you shave, the hair will come back thicker, darker, and faster. But that's not how hair works. Shaving cuts hair at the surface. It doesn't affect the root, follicle, or growth rate. What changes is appearance. Newly cut hair has a blunt edge, making it feel coarser or look darker, especially compared to sun-lightened, tapered tips. But the texture, speed, and color of hair are determined by genetics and hormones, not razors. So go ahead and shave. You're not unleashing a wave of turbo hair. You're just cutting what's already grown. It's been drilled into classrooms for decades. Some people are visual learners, others auditory, others kinesthetic. And if you just match teaching style to learning style, performance skyrockets. Sounds ideal, but research says it doesn't hold up. Do people have preferences? Yes. Do they perform better when taught in their style? Not consistently. Numerous studies have failed to show that tailoring lessons to learning styles actually improves outcomes. In fact, most real learning depends on what you're learning, not how you think you prefer to learn. Diagrams might help with geometry, but listening works better for language. It's context, not personality. The learning styles theory is appealing because it makes education feel personal and easy to fix, but it can become a crutch, a way to avoid challenging your brain in new modes. Want to learn deeply? Use multiple methods. Read, listen, write, explain, practice. The brain thrives on variety, not limitation. I'm just not a math person. It's said casually, but it hides a dangerous myth. That math ability is something you either have or don't. The truth: math is a learned skill, not an innate gift. Sure, some people have natural aptitude or interest, but like reading or running, math improves with practice and good teaching. Saying you're not a math person often comes from bad experiences, rigid classrooms, timed tests, or early confusion that never got resolved. But none of that means your brain isn't capable. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire and grow, means you can build new skills at any age, math included. Treat math like a language, a logic puzzle, or a muscle. You may not master calculus overnight, but you can improve and even come to enjoy it. In the productivity world, nonfiction often gets treated as superior, a direct route to knowledge, growth, or success. Fiction, that's for escapists. But this binary is deeply flawed. Reading fiction strengthens empathy, imagination, and theory of mind, the ability to understand other perspectives. It boosts verbal intelligence, deepens emotional processing, and stimulates creativity. MRI scans show that engaging with fiction activates brain regions involved in language, memory, and social understanding, sometimes more than nonfiction. Fiction teaches us about human behavior, inner lives, and complex systems just as effectively as data and facts do. It doesn't spoon feed, it invites you to feel, interpret, and reflect. So the next time someone tells you fiction is just fluff, remind them that stories build the foundation of culture, empathy, and insight. This myth refuses to die. It's been used in movies, motivational speeches, and pop psychology books for decades. You only use 10% of your brain. Imagine if you used it all. But this idea is nonsense. Modern neuroscience shows that virtually every part of the brain has a function and is active even when you're resting. Brain scans reveal widespread activity during even simple tasks. The brain is expensive tissue. It uses about 20% of your body's energy. Evolution wouldn't waste 90% of that real estate on nothing. The origin of the myth is murky, perhaps based on misunderstood research from the 1800s or early 1900s, but it's been debunked over and over. You use 100% of your brain. You're just not always conscious of it. Carbohydrates have been demonized for decades, branded as fattening, unnecessary, and even toxic. But here's the truth. Carbs are not your enemy. Your body and brain actually prefer carbs as their primary fuel. Whole food sources like fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains provide essential fiber, vitamins, and minerals, plus sustained energy. The problem isn't carbs, it's refined carbs, sugary snacks, white bread, soda. These spike blood sugar and contribute to energy crashes. But lumping all carbs into the bad category is nutritional illiteracy. Low carb diets can work for some, especially short term, but carbs themselves are not the villain. Demonizing them ignores the complexity of metabolism, hormones, and long term health. Carbs aren't bad. Bad science is. After holiday indulgence, detox teas and cleanse kits come calling, but your body isn't a clogged pipe. It's a self regulating system, and it doesn't need your help flushing toxins with juice or supplements. The liver, kidneys, lungs, and skin already detoxify you daily. That's their job. If your body couldn't detox, you'd be in the hospital. Most detox products are just expensive fiber, laxatives, or diuretics. You lose water, not toxins. You may feel lighter, but it's not a cleanse. It's dehydration. Want to recover from a binge? Hydrate. Sleep. Eat real food. Move your body. No magic tea required. It's easy to believe the more you sweat, the more fat you burn. After all, sweat feels like effort, but sweat is your cooling system, not a fat burning meter. How much you sweat depends on genetics, temperature, humidity, and hydration, not calorie burn. You could burn 500 calories lifting weights in a cool gym with little sweat, or just sit in a sauna and drench yourself without losing any fat at all. Sweat is about thermoregulation, not fat loss. The only weight you're losing in sweat is water, and it comes right back when you rehydrate. Fat loss happens from a calorie deficit over time, not from how wet your shirt gets. Step on the scale, see the number, think it defines your health. It doesn't, not even close. Weight alone doesn't account for body composition, muscle mass, bone density, hydration, or where fat is stored. Two people can weigh the same and have completely different health profiles. BMI, body mass index, is often used as a health marker, but it too is flawed. It doesn't distinguish fat from muscle or account for ethnicity, genetics, or body type. Health is about function, not appearance. Can you move well, sleep soundly, manage stress, maintain good blood pressure, glucose, and mobility? Chasing a number on the scale can distract from real wellness. Numbers matter, but context matters more. You've probably been told this in winter. Don't forget your hat. You lose most of your body heat through your head. But that's not entirely true. Heat escapes from any exposed part of your body, not just your head. If you went outside wearing only a hat and nothing else, you'd definitely lose more heat elsewhere. The myth comes from a flawed 1950s military experiment where test subjects wore Arctic gear, but no hats. Naturally, they lost more heat through their uncovered heads. But if your head is the only thing exposed, of course that's where the heat goes. In reality, Heat loss is proportional to surface area and exposure, not location. So yes, wear a hat when it's cold, but know you're not magically losing 80% of your warmth through your scalp. The sound is loud. The motion looks awkward, but cracking your knuckles doesn't harm your joints, and it doesn't cause arthritis. That pop is the sound of gas bubbles in the synovial fluid collapsing or forming, not bones grinding or joints breaking down. Multiple studies have shown no correlation between knuckle cracking and arthritis. In fact, one doctor famously cracked the knuckles on one hand for decades and left the other untouched. No difference in joint health. While excessive cracking may irritate soft tissue or annoy everyone around you, it won't doom you to arthritis. That's mostly driven by age, genetics, injury, and inflammation. So crack away, responsibly. This myth has survived generations. But no, cutting hair doesn't affect its thickness, speed, or texture. Hair growth happens at the follicle level, under the scalp. Cutting the end of the strand doesn't change the root's biology. What it does do is leave a blunt tip, which may feel coarser as it grows out, creating the illusion of thickness. The same myth applies to shaving legs, arms, or beards. The hair feels stubbier, not fuller. In reality, your hair's thickness, speed, and density are determined by hormones and genetics, not scissors or razors. Want thicker hair? Focus on nutrition, hormones, and scalp health, not cutting frequency. You've seen the blue veins on your wrist and maybe assumed blood changes color when deoxygenated. But here's the reality. Human blood is always red, just in varying shades. Oxygen-rich blood is bright red. Oxygen-poor blood is darker, more maroon. So why do your veins look blue? It's an optical illusion, caused by the way light penetrates skin and how your eyes perceive color through tissue. In reality, your blood stays red inside you, no matter how much oxygen it carries. And the only time it looks blue is when viewed through a few millimeters of skin, not under a microscope. The blue blood idea makes for dramatic TV, but it's bad biology. You're answering emails, on a call, and checking your calendar at the same time. You feel productive, right? But here's the truth. Your brain isn't multitasking. It's task switching, and that comes at a cost. The prefrontal cortex, which manages attention, isn't wired to focus on multiple complex tasks simultaneously. When you try to do two thinking tasks at once, like writing and listening, it rapidly switches focus back and forth. That delay? It increases errors, slows performance, and exhausts mental energy. Studies show multitasking can reduce productivity by up to 40%. It also impairs memory formation and lowers accuracy. What feels like efficiency is often distraction. Real productivity comes from deep focus, not juggling flaming chainsaws. It might feel like your brain shuts down when you fall asleep, but it's actually incredibly active. In fact, some areas light up more during sleep than when you're awake. Your brain cycles through multiple stages: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM. During REM, your brain processes emotions, consolidates memories, and runs simulations through dreams. It prunes unnecessary connections and strengthens critical ones. Sleep isn't passive, it's your brain's maintenance mode, cleaning out waste, filing away experiences, and preparing you for the next day. Without sleep, cognitive performance plummets, creativity crashes, and emotional regulation suffers. Your brain doesn't shut off, it reboots. We treat memory like a filing cabinet: store a fact, retrieve it later unchanged. But memory is reconstructive, not static. It's like a Wikipedia page, editable each time you access it. Every time you recall a memory, your brain slightly rewrites it. It updates based on your current mood, new knowledge, or subtle suggestion. This is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable, and why two people can remember the same event completely differently. Your memories are stories shaped over time. They carry emotion, perspective, and distortion, not just data. What you remember isn't a recording, it's a narrative. For years, a popular claim was that left handed people die up to 9 years earlier than right handed ones. It sounds dramatic, but it's misleading. This idea came from flawed studies in the 1980s that didn't account for generational shifts. In earlier decades, many left handed people were forced to use their right hand, so older populations underrepresented lefties. It made it appear as if fewer elderly left handers existed, leading to a false conclusion. Modern research finds no significant difference in life expectancy between left and right handed individuals. Lefties may face some ergonomic or tool related challenges, but they're not doomed to an earlier grave. Left handed? You're just wired differently, not shorter lived. It's a comforting idea that lightning doesn't strike the same place twice, but nature isn't sentimental. If conditions are right, lightning will strike wherever it wants, as many times as needed. In fact, tall buildings like the Empire State Building are struck dozens of times each year. Lightning is guided by height, conductivity, and local conditions, not novelty. The phrase survives because it sounds poetic and reassuring, but in reality, the same spot can, and often does, get hit again. So if you're in a thunderstorm, don't test fate by standing where lightning already struck. It has no memory and no mercy. Dogs don't live in a world of grayscale gloom. While their color vision isn't the same as ours, they can still see shades of blue and yellow, just not red or green. A dog's vision is similar to a human with red-green color blindness. They rely more on contrast, brightness, and motion than vibrant hues. Why did this myth spread? Because early researchers didn't fully understand canine eye biology. Now, with modern imaging and behavioral tests, we know dogs see a limited but colorful world, not just black and white. So yes, your dog sees your blue jeans, but that red ball, probably just a gray blur. Yes, but that's just the start. Mosquitoes are drawn to a cocktail of signals: body heat, carbon dioxide, skin chemicals, and even movement. Some people get bitten more because of their blood type, genetics, or microbiome. Type O blood, for example, seems to attract more bites. So do people who exhale more CO2, like during exercise, or those with certain skin bacteria. Mosquitoes don't hunt by sight. They follow scent trails and heat signatures like tiny infrared drones. So, while body heat is a factor, it's part of a larger, invisible equation. We've all heard it. Don't swallow gum. It'll stay in your stomach for 7 years. But no, it won't. That's a myth, meant to scare kids into spitting it out. While gum is indigestible, it doesn't sit in your stomach like a cursed relic. Your digestive system does what it always does: pushes indigestible materials through your intestines and out the other end, usually in a day or two. Swallowing massive amounts of gum could cause a blockage, especially in young children, but that's rare and extreme. So while it's not recommended, one swallowed piece won't haunt your insides for years. Myths aren't just false, they're sticky. They spread because they feel good, sound smart, or help us explain the unknown. But truth requires curiosity, humility, and constant revision. The next time you hear a fact that sounds too clean, too simple, or too dramatic, pause, ask questions, dig deeper, because the most dangerous myths are the ones we never think to doubt.